Hello? Hello, hello? Is there anybody out there? I think we're live. Yep. Alright. Alright, Pink Floyd is officially out there. Hey Dougie, how's it going? Is anybody out there? It's been a while since I played any Pink Floyd. Now I get the urge now. Alright, good morning everybody. I'm just gonna give it a few more minutes. Hey Sam, good to have you here. Just give me 1 second. Today is Friday. Oh, right. So today is, for some of you guys, most of you guys actually, is the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July for those American people tuning in. Piotr. I don't know how to say, pronounce your name. Piotr. Hey man, thanks for your tell us. No worries. Glad you find him useful. Good morning, also known as good evening here in the US. Just fair enough. So I guess, are you guys celebrating anything today? I bet you do. Or was it yesterday? I'm completely off with the calendar. Hey Hugh too, how's it going? Carol. All right. We're gonna get started today. So I have planned a few things to show you. Hopefully they will make sense throughout the live stream today. We're gonna continue with this alien weird looking gun. In the previous stream we basically blocked everything out, but I'm not concerned. Like I said in the previous one, I'm not concerned about the topology. Everything is gonna be dynameshed and it's gonna be very organic. It's not gonna be the typical, hard surface, perfectly hard surface asset that you might think of. It's gonna be very organic. We're going outdoors as soon as the darkness falls. That's great. Awesome. So, alright, so before that happens, let's go ahead and get started, and so that you can see a couple of tricks and techniques that I have for you in store today. So, I'm just going to change to one of my grain matcast materials. So what I want to do first is go through all of the subtools that I currently have, and just sort of soften these a little bit, because the edges are a little bit hard. So I want to soften these first, turn them into Dynamesh, and then we can take it from there. And once we have kind of like the more organic version of this weapon, we can start adding some like booleans and details, and hopefully we'll have time for all that today. Great. Just 1 second. I forgot to bring in my little Epic pen, so I can draw on screen if I need to, or if you guys want me to explain something. I'm just gonna leave it there. Alright, cool. So in order to, like I said, soften one of the things, by the way, so I also have this plane, which is, I don't have the image, doesn't matter. Just gonna go into solo mode and show you. So this is the sketch that I did for the gun, and it is just a pure plane, a simple plane. But what I did with this plane was I painted the sketch. So I brought in the last stream, you can watch that in the previous one, I imported a simple sketch, a thumbnail, and I projected it, or projected that image into the plane. And so now this is polypaint information. So if we wanted to, we can go with a paintbrush and then refine and change things here within ZBrush, which is pretty cool. But it's a plane, and I have the double set to off. For you guys would be on the display properties. This double is off, so when I rotate around, I won't see the back face of this polygon. And this is great because it allows me to sort of like have a reference of where I'm going, but if I work around on the other side, then I don't have to see the plane. So I mean, it's not not groundbreaking, but it's a good thing. All right. So right now I'm gonna hide this guy, and I'm gonna select one of these. Let's start with that one. I'm going to solo mode. So if I turn polyframe on, you'll see this is kind of like one of the serial mesh that we use. So it's a pretty decent topology for what we have. I'm going to go ahead and turn on dynamic. Actually, I'm going to work from the dynamic properties here on the geometry palette so that you guys know how to find them. I have most of them, the ones that I use most of the time, I have them here in the corner of my UI. So you won't be able to see it because of the camera in the stream. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I'm going to work from this, sorry, not this one, this one, from dynamic subdivision right here. Cool, so all we have to do is turn on dynamic, and that will give us a preview of how the geometry would look like if we were to subdivide it. So this is a really good tool for many reasons. Let me just change to a move brush, make sure symmetry is on. So yeah, this is a really good tool because it allows you to preview that subdivision without actually applying it. So you'll see in the geometry I don't have any subdivisions. If I wanted to, I can. If I'm happy with this, how this is looking, I can apply it, and now I have 3 subdivision levels, which is great. I'm gonna undo that because that's not what I want. I just wanna keep a preview. Then I'm gonna edit this preview, and then once I'm happy with how it's looking, then I can apply it and just redynamize it or whatever else. So the way that I like to tweak this is just going to the Q grid. So right now it's at 0. So if I just change that to 1, you'll see the change immediately. There we go. So it sharpens everything a little bit, and we can play with the chamfer process, bevel, constant. It depends on what you want to achieve, but basically this allows you to play around with these switches and see what looks best, and then just with the coverage to tweak how much of that effect you want. So this is kind of like adding a more softer edge. So if I go out of solo mode, you'll see it's much better. I mean, it doesn't look as blocky as this other one here, and this is just how I would go about making this type of transitions. So we can just play with the coverage, and because it's a preview, it's not set in stone, we can go back and keep tweaking this as we go. So that's kind of like what I'm going to do a little bit faster now that I sort of show you what I went through with the rest of the stuff. So let's go ahead and select that one, go into solo mode, and you can change the dynamic properties obviously, so you have a different coverage and grid for every subtool, which is awesome. Sometimes you'll find certain weird artifacts, but that's just because of like I said, the topology that we use to generate this is not great. So something we can do to fix it really quickly is just add a poly loop here, right click, insert. I'm selecting similar, by the way. So the similar, then hover over the edge, right click, insert, and right now I have selected the insert edge loop, and I have a single edge loop, not multiple. So I can just click and drag, and that will you'll see how it sharpens up this border here, and I could do the same thing around this area. So now we're gonna get this sharper line in the mesh, and then we can just add another one here, just to sharpen this border even more. All right, so that's looking cool. Again, I'm not worried at all about the topology. Everything is going to change. I just want to have a softer transition so that when I generate the Dynamesh, then I have a better topology to work with. All right, so that's cool. Let's have a look at the chat really quickly. Hello, Pablo. Are you going to render it on ZBrush? Mr. Manson, I might. Yep, I might render it in ZBrush. I haven't planned it or anything, so I just want to go through a series of different techniques. But definitely, we can try to render it in ZBrush. By the way, guys, if you haven't seen, I shared something at the beginning of this week, I believe. about a masterclass series that I'm doing. It's just a free series of 3 videos that are focusing only on presentation and how you can take your ZBrush sculpture and make it, look much better. Or it doesn't have to be. It's not specific to ZBrush. It's just a series of tips and tricks. I'm gonna use a bunch of different software that I'm sure you're gonna find useful, and it's already live, the registration. So if you wanna register, I'm about to finish the first one and send it around, and it's gonna be all about presentation. So whatever I show you today and in these streams, it's kind of like a good first pass. But once you have something that you like, you can have a look at those videos that I'm sharing, that masterclass, and you can take that into a more polished illustration or more polished render. So if you're interested on that, I'm just gonna share the link later on. Actually, let me just do it right now, and then someone else is interested, I'll share it after. And if you're in the newsletter, by the way, if you're in my newsletter, you will receive the videos straight away into your inbox once they're ready. You don't have to register or anything. This is just for anyone that is new to it, or that simply, if you know someone that might find it interesting. That's what this is for, this registration. But again, if you're already part of the email list, don't worry about it. You'll get it straight away. That's the whole point of being in the list. Cool. So let's go ahead and continue with the rest. I'm gonna hold Alt, select this, go into solo mode here. This one is gonna be slightly different. Let's have a look at the topology, because again, the topology is not great. So let's go ahead and click dynamic. There we go. Let's turn on QGrid. It's not too bad. Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, maybe this one, I would like this to be a little bit smoother. So something we can do is go make sure the perspective is off, rotate the camera holding Shift. So if you hold Shift, when you rotate the camera, it's going to snap to the view. So this is a side, dead on side view. And I'm going to go ahead and select the mask lasso, and I'm going to mask these points here, invert the masking, bring in the gizmo, click on this go to unmask area so that it centers the gizmo right there, and I can just, with the dynamic subdivision preview, which is another great tool of this, or another great feature of this tool, really, is that you can move things around when you're still in that mode. I'm gonna do the same thing here. I just want to give it a bit more of a curvature here, so it's not, you cannot see straight away the faceted polygons. All right. So let's go ahead and play around with the coverage. Right. So this coverage is the one that allows us to, fine-tune this curvature here. Again, it's not a perfect geometry to subdivide, but again, something else that we can do once we have these right from this menu. Actually, before we do that, there is a smooth slider as well. So this smooth slider, or smooth subdivision slider, is the one that helps you determine how much subdivision you're applying. So right now it's a level 2. So you have the original sort of like geometry plus 2 levels of subdivision. So if you apply this, that's what you get in here. Then you'll get 3 levels of subdivision basically. So if I do another one, you'll see it gets smoother. That looks alright. I'm gonna go to my C modeler and make sure symmetry is enabled. Yep. Just gonna click, right click, and this time I'm gonna select the multiple edge loops. So that way I can, the reason I select multiple edge loops right now is because that one will average. It will look at, ZBrush is going to look, let me just show you. With multiple edge loops selected, ZBrush is going to look at, let's say, if I want to put something in this, throughout this, across this edge loop. ZBrush is going to take a look at the next edge here, and the next, the one on the left and the one on the right, for example, and it's going to average and start right in the middle. So once you click and drag, it will generate multiple edge loops, but it's going to start right in the middle. So if you only click once, that ensures that this distance and this distance is exactly the same. So that's really cool. So you'll see if I click once, this is right in the middle. It doesn't matter if I have symmetry on or off, it's going to be always in the middle. And obviously if you click and drag, that's when you generate multiple ones. So I'm just going to leave it at that, just one. And then what we can do is right click and then use another tool with from the gizmo, from the C modeler, which is the bevel. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to then, I'm going to hold control and mask this area, invert that. So I basically masked out everything, masked everything but the center set of polygroups, or edges. And then I'm going to bring in the gizmo, maybe turn off symmetry so that we can center it right in the middle, and then we can scale this like so. And you'll see, as I go closer to the edge, it just sharpens everything a bit. I'm just going to sharpen that a little bit more. There we go. Clear the mask, and now we have something that looks cool. That looks something like that. So you have this nice kind of like edge around there. Again, this is going to be softened once I turn this into a dynamic, but that's cool for now. All right. All right, so that's working. Let's go ahead and do this a little bit faster now that you know what I'm doing. I'm going to turn on dynamic for this one. QGrid 1. Play with the coverage. There we go. So all these artifacts, again, I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm going to soften that with Dynamesh in just a second. Let's do the same thing here. There we go. Alright, so that's looking a little bit more interesting. And I think the trigger also needs the same. Cool. We can do the same thing here. I mean, this piece is not too bad. I might just keep it. This one right here might not need to be redynamesh or worked on. This could be one of the hard surface bits. So let's go ahead and work a little bit more thoroughly in the dynamic mode. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. Just want a little bit more of a roundness here. All right, so I think something like that, and then what we can do is, use the C modeler and use the insert. Hang on, right click, insert, single edge loop, and I'm just going to sharpen some of these areas here. So I'm going to use click here, and that will just create a new poly loop, and that will sharpen that area. Same thing here, and I'm going to sharpen this border towards the edge as well, and maybe here at the back as well. I mean, you won't see this part, but if we wanted to, we could also sharpen all of these edges. So that will be an easy one. Just do something like that, and just repeat the same process here. Whoops, like so, and a couple more here at the bottom. So this is just adding edge loops to sharpen some of these areas, and I think that's looking pretty decent. Not entirely sure about this area here, but yeah, let's see if we can do something about it. I'm just adding another set of poly loops just to sharpen those details here. Alright, so I think that looks a little bit more interesting, a bit better. Yeah, that looks cool. We can just fine tune it after. Cool, so I think we're done with the dynamic subdivision. I'm not gonna do any dynamic subdivision to these guys here, because I want to work on these ones separately in a different subtool, and then just bring them over once I apply the booleans and all that. Same thing with this one. I mean, this one is just a Dynamesh. It's not too bad, but we'll see how we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and see if you have it, guys. If you guys have any question. Hey, Hanifa, how you going? This is Miguel. Oi, how's everyone going? Cool. So let's go ahead, and this is looking too clean. So let's go ahead and mess it up and destroy a little bit, and then it's like a full circle. You start with something that is not too clean it up, then destroy it, and then clean it back again, and so on. At least at this stage, that I'm basically designing as I go. So I'm just making choices in terms of what looks better or what doesn't in design. But yeah, let's turn this into a Dynamesh, and then I'll show you a couple of cool techniques. So this one is already a Dynamesh mesh. I'm gonna select this one, which looks pretty clean. So I'm just thinking some of these we might not even need to Dynamesh it, but maybe let's leave that one as it is. I think I'm gonna Dynamesh this. Oops. I'm gonna Dynamesh this one, or apply the subdivision level. So let's go ahead and click apply. So now we have subdivision levels for this mesh. I'm gonna delete them, and let's go ahead and Dynamesh this one. So if I click Dynamesh, the resolution is too low. So let's go to the Dynamesh subpalette here. I'm gonna increase the resolution quite a bit, and I'm gonna make sure I click on polish. So when ZBrush does the Dynamesh or Dynamesh this object, it's gonna apply a polishing effect. So if I go to solo mode, hopefully it will be pretty evident around this area and here, I believe. So let's go ahead and click Dynamesh. So you see just polishing those edges, but we still need a bit more resolution. Alright, so that's not too bad. Cool. So now that we have Dynamesh, what we can do, we also have the polish enable. I'm gonna make sure that the AccuCurve is enabled as well for my move brush, and that's for you guys under the brush palette, under the curve. If I just check that in here, yeah, brush palette, curve, AccuCurve, and that's the one that allows you to create very pointy, pull very pointy shapes. So I'm gonna turn on symmetry, and I'm just gonna start pulling and pushing areas here. So this is kind of like redesigning or redefining the design, right? And like I said, I want this to be a pretty organic weapon. So I'm gonna try to edges, but for the most part, everything is gonna look pretty blobby. I'm not sure if this is gonna look alright or cool or anything, but it's just an idea that I had, and maybe it's gonna work. We'll see. So this is the type of thing that I'm looking for. Not a perfectly straight line, but like a series of, you know, organic pieces, kind of like interlocking. All right, let's go ahead and do that as well here, something like that. And again, all I'm doing is just pulling areas with the move brush, nothing more. All right. And I mean, all of this process is going to be a little bit boring to watch. I'm going to turn off the cylinders temporarily, these ones here. So we can have a better idea of what we're doing here with the move brush. By the way, any of you guys have this Netflix series called Dark? I think it's a German production. It's pretty incredible. I mean, it's one of those time travel thingies that had to do with time travel, and most of those things, when I start watching those type of series or movies that deal with that, I tend to get confused. But this one is very complex in terms of the like how everything is interlinked. But you know, it's very well done, so you can follow along with all the characters and everything. It's really really well done. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you watch it. Alright, I'm gonna dynamesh this a little bit. Maybe at this point what I'll do is turn off polish, and we get this blobbiness, which I kind of like. I'm gonna smooth this a bit. Alright, so that's looking alright. I want to kind of connect this a bit more, or make it feel a little bit more connected. And remember, in the design I have this area kind of like with a hole and a sphere. So again, this is still very, you know, playing with the block out. Alright, dynamesh that. Now let's go ahead and do this in this area. This is a pretty thin, well, it's not that thin anyway. Let's go ahead and apply the subdivision level, delete subdivision level. So now we have just a mesh. We're gonna dynamesh this with polish and with a resolution of 300/400. Let's just undo that and double check. Let's see what it gives us without polishing. Oops, forgot to change the resolution. There we go. No, what I'll do is I'll enable polish, but then I'll increase the resolution a bit more. Alright, so that looks cool. And let's go ahead and make sure symmetry is enabled as well. Keep pushing things around. Alright. So you'll see that this is why I said at the beginning that I was not concerned about the topology at all, just because I'm doing this type of very organic sculpting over the kind of like hard surface shapes, I guess that's what you would call it. But once I finish with this pass, I'm going to show you a couple of interesting techniques that I'm sure you're already familiar with, but just going to show you my process. Hopefully that gives you ideas using the, I don't know if you used it already, the Snapshot 3D with the Spotlight 2.0, like the new Spotlight. So we're gonna do a few Boolean things and a few artifacts, and I'm gonna show you a really cool technique to get something polished straight away from the Snapshot 3D. Cool. I'm gonna redynamesh that. So that's looking good. This part is already a dynamesh. Great. So we can just simply start moving things around. Make sure symmetry is enabled again. Something like that. This one is the one that we use with the Sculptris Pro as well. Alright. I think I'm not gonna do too much. I'm not gonna change this shape too much. Something we can do, this is a really quick technique. We can use the Gizmo 3D, like the modifiers or the deformers, or we can use just masking just to flatten this a bit. I'll show you what I would do with just masking. It's a pretty simple, but it's a simple process, but it's quite powerful if you have very simple shapes that you can just tweak really quickly. Let's go into solo mode. Let's do a quick save as well. I like this gun style, cheers mate. Don't is not boring to watch the process. Which you making those cylinders? Don't worry, I'm gonna redo the cylinders. The ones that I did last stream were just kind of like a block out to know where I'm placing them. But I'm gonna do them a little bit more thoroughly with booleans and stuff in just a second. I mean, let's see how. I think we have time for doing all that. So I'm just gonna show you something else. So if I hold Control and I'm just masking, let's say I mask this area here. Actually, let's do it again. I'm gonna mask this entire section, and then I'm gonna invert the mask, and then I'm gonna bring in my gizmo, position that, and then just flatten this like that, and that's gonna create that kind of like little, you know, an extra, like a paneling effect, like a very rough panel effect, and then you can just move this around if you want to. Cool. So I'm gonna clear that and run Dynamesh again. Oops, I don't have Dynamesh, so let's do that. Polish. Oops. There you go. So you see, it gets even though we're using Dynamesh, it gets like this very sort of sharp edge in there, which is kind of cool. So it looks a little bit more polished. All right. I'm gonna do the same thing with this one, although I don't mind this one, but let's just do the same thing. So I'm gonna apply the subdivision level. Apply the dynamic subdivision. Then I'm gonna delete subdivision level. So this is what we have, and then I'm gonna go ahead and click polish and Dynamesh with a resolution of 600. So pretty similar, but now this is a Dynamesh object. Cool. Let's get out of solo mode and let's see how we can integrate this just by pushing and pulling stuff. And remember, I'm using the move brush with the AccuCurve enabled, so that's why I can pull very pointy areas very quickly. I almost use the move brush with the AccuCurve as a default, to be honest. I don't, unless I'm doing something very soft. Oops, I forgot to have symmetry enabled. That's not a problem. Let's just go ahead and mirror, and then mirror and weld, and now activate symmetry just to make sure everything is symmetrical at this point. Yeah, so I don't use the kind of like the standard move brush anymore, unless I'm doing something very soft, or when I'm posing a character. That's when I would use it. But generally speaking, for this type of things, I prefer to use the AccuCurve. Move brush with what curve? I couldn't understand. To make it sharper. It's not to make it sharper. I mean, it is kind of like sharper. The AccuCurve, I'll show you what it is. Basically, this is what it's doing. When you pull something, it's just pinching it and grabbing just a tiny bit of it, and that is brush palette, curve, subpalette, AccuCurve. So if I turn this off, you get the normal behavior of the brush, whereas with AccuCurve you get this very pointy one. It's subtle in this case, but it does makes a huge difference, especially if you're just moving things subtly, like very subtly, like this. Okay, I think we're getting there. Just gonna sharpen those corners. I'm always when I'm doing this type of things that I'm kind of like designing as I go, I always try to focus on the transitions, and that, I think that is one of the most important things, at least for me, transitioning between different surfaces or different pieces, regardless of what I'm doing. I mean, in this case, it's kind of like a semi-hard surface organic gun, but I do the same thing with any creature, character, or anything. Always focusing on transitioning between different surfaces. Let's pull this one up a bit here. We can also use the mask brushes or the masking tools, sort of like determine an area that we want to be able to affect. Let's go ahead and invert that. I'm just going to mask kind of like the border a bit more, actually, like so. And now we can just have more liberty to, or freedom to just push things like that, knowing that it's not going to affect the rest. So you'll see it's a very organic process, what I'm trying to do here. Alright. So I think that's starting to look a little bit more interesting. I mean, you'll see if I turn on the little sketch, these type of things are not part of the original design. And that's what I meant about, you know, designing as I go. I'm going to undo that first, going to solo mode, and I think I need to add a bit more geometry here. So I'm going to go to inflate brush and just add something here at the back. Just so that when we dynamesh, it's not going to create a very thin area. There we go. Back to move brush, and that's it. Now this area right here, I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast and change things a bit really quickly using the masking brushes again. Just select kind of like an area that I want like that, invert the masking, and I'm basically just painting this area with mask, and then we can go ahead and sharpen the mask a little bit, go into the gizmo, center that to the unmasked areas, and then we can do, you know, we can start generating some designs very quickly like so. And this is the other reason I decided to go with Dynamesh before anything, because I'm not worrying about the topology. This is a completely destroyed here, but I can just clear the mask and then redynamesh, and because we're using the polish, we're getting this really nice, so like paneling effect again. So pretty cool stuff. And you can keep doing the same thing everywhere, anywhere that you want. Let's say here something like that, maybe a little bit here, right? Maybe a bit more. And this is something that we can do as well with other techniques. I just want to show you this kind of like first pass and see what you guys think. So I'm going to invert that, sharpen the mask, bring in the gizmo, center it to the unmasked area, and I can just push it like so, just a tiny bit, maybe too much. Just want something subtle here, and then I'm just going to push it up, clear the mask, redynamesh with the polish, and there you go. So there's some bits that need tweaking, but you know, for the most part it's pretty good. We can go to the damp standard brush. So this is kind of like, I know it doesn't look polished, but this is the type of look that I'm really going for. I don't know, I just want to try it. So I want something that you would say, this is not clearly is not a hard surface model. So you still have these indications of like paneling effects and stuff like that, but it's going to be very organic. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see. You can only try, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just redynamesh and do something else. Alright, clear that out. Maybe I can turn off polish, redynamesh, and you'll see it becomes a bit more blobby. I'm gonna increase the resolution a bit. But it doesn't matter. If you don't use polish, what you can do is then go to the deformation palette here and use the polish feature here, and that is essentially doing a similar process. Let's see, polish by features, polish by groups. I don't have polygroups, do I? Oh yeah. Yeah, we could potentially just polish by groups. The thing is that we're gonna lose some of the sharpness. So let's just leave it like that. I think that looks cool as a sketch. I think we forgot to do this one. So, I mean, forgot to enable the dynamic. Let's just do that really quickly. Apply it, delete, and dynamesh it with polish. Cool, a bit more resolution, maybe. There we go. And with the move brush again, with symmetry enable, let's just fine tune this little shape here at the bottom. All right, pretty cool. I think we have a couple more actually. This one, let's go ahead and apply it. This one is the one, the one that looks that looks worse, to be honest, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and do a bit of work in this one. So I'm gonna apply the dynamic. I'm gonna delete the subdivision levels. Go to Dynamesh, make sure I have enough resolution with polish, and run that. Cool. So now that we have that, I'm just gonna push some of these areas here, and I think I'm gonna clip this area. We could try that with a clip brush, with a clip brush or with booleans. Let's try with a clip brush first. So I'm gonna select a clip circle, just clip this area. Whoops. Like so. No, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. I'll do that with booleans, as I originally intended. Okay. I forgot. Oh, this is going to be the. I'm not gonna destroy this too much because this is meant to be the kind of like the handle or like the grip. So actually, I'm gonna smooth this out a bit. And you'll see just by playing around with these. I mean, starting with a a dynamic subdivision mesh that then I turn into Dynamesh. We can play around with these transitions really nicely with a very soft transitioning between this more organic shape into this more flattened version, or more, defined edge, which is pretty cool. All right, let's just tweak the area here for the trigger a bit more, make it a little bit more rounder. And it's just gonna use the smooth brush to soften this. And let's play around with this area here. So this is starting to look a little bit better than what I had before. I kind of like this gap here. We'll do something cool here around this area maybe. So I think at this point I'm completely departing from the original thumbnail that I did. But again, that's part of the process, and that's what I was intending to do. Go into solo mode, because this area has, I mean, this is like the main part of the gun. So I just want to see what else I can do. So here I can just push this in, so we got rid of that. And I can switch between different subtools just by pressing Alt, right? So right now I have this subtool selected. If I hold the Alt key and select this one, it just allows me to swap really quickly from the viewport. So holding Alt and click, and that allows me to, fine tune multiple at once. Well, not at once, but you know what I mean. Like without having to concentrate on just one, and I can treat this as a single mesh almost. Right, so we're getting there. This is starting to, I mean, from a close-up it looks alright, but I don't know, I think it's starting to look a little bit boring, so just gonna smooth this. You know what, this is going to be more organic, one of the more organic shapes. why not? All right. Just increase the brush size, and I think these. I don't know much about guns. Like I said, I don't I don't do this often. If I were doing like a proper job, I'd probably do a little bit more research into how things work, so that I can fake it a little bit better and make this weapon. Although it's an alien weapon, I could make it a little bit more believable. But this thin part here, I don't know. Like I said, if you guys know, just let me know. It's kind of like where the weapon will rest on the shoulder, kind of. So just for the recoil or whatever. Don't know if that has a name even, but that's, yeah. Well, I'm gonna call it the shoulder rest or the armrest, whatever. So this is gonna have a slightly different look. We will add some parts here to make it more interesting. Just gonna mask this area. Bring in the gizmo. I'm gonna push this up a bit. Clear that mask. Run Dynamesh, and there we go. So this is the beauty of working with Dynamesh. It's not worrying about the topology or the Sculptris Pro. Just whichever you wanna use. I'm using Dynamesh at this point just because I can maintain at least the same level of kind of like a consistent geometry all across, and then when I want to do details, then I can go into Sculptris Pro. I'm gonna tweak this one and actually run Dynamesh because this one was the original Sculptris Pro, and we can just go ahead and start tweaking this a bit more, make it a little bit more, feel more intentional, rather than just a blob of geometry there. Go into solo mode, and right, I can see a few comments. I'll just check them in just a second. I want to finish with this pass, and then if you guys have questions about this process, I'm happy to answer them if I can, if I know the answer. Right. Run Dynamesh once more, and I think I'm gonna push this up a bit. Maybe bring in the damp standard brush. So we can bring in the clay. This is something that I wanted to do a bit like after this whole process, but we'll do it now, just to get this one right, and then I'll show you how I would use the same technique across different subtools. Okay, I'm just extending that bit. There we go. So again, this is just thinking about the transitioning between the shapes, like I was saying before. Just like how they kind of like interlock with each other. But again, try to keep it very soft and very organic. That's the idea with this weapon. Cool. I think let me just do something similar with this one, with the clay brush. And this is pretty much what I'm gonna do in the next step, really. Using the clay brush to figure out some of the shapes, and then the damp standard brush to redefine the edges, and then we can use something like, again, I'll explain this one in just a second. Just wanna make sure I get this part right before we start with this actual kind of like step of the process. Alright, so something like that. Definitely the cylinders that we had here at the top, they give this weapon a lot of character, I think. So we have to, like, they're kind of like the kind of one of the feature shapes of this gun. So we're gonna have to spend some time making sure that they look alright. I think I'm gonna call this done. How are we with time? Yeah, so we've done a bit of progress with the weapon. I just wanna do a few more things so that it looks the progress that we've made today. It looks more clear. All right, so let's see if you guys have any questions about it before I continue. Fantastic, I like how you're modeling. Thank you so much. Comics Legend, the all-click different subtool on the viewport is a great tip. Yeah, it's I think is one of the most fundamental things that you need that you should learn before going forward, because ultimately in ZBrush, I think the key of understanding how ZBrush works is the understanding of subtools and how you can combine them, mix them together, use them to subtract and things like that. But it's all about the subtools, and having that little trick of just selecting from the viewport is just the best way. I think is the best way to select them. You can also press N. So if you press N on your keyboard, you'll get the pop-out, and you can just select them, like visually select which ones. And this is another great tool if you have like very small pieces that it's like sometimes hard to select with the alt click. You can just press M. I forgot what it was. N. I don't use this one often. N. So if you press N, it allows you to select especially if you have smaller pieces. Nice work. Have you done this before? Have I done this weapon before? This project before? If you're referring, if I ask if I've done this specific design before, no. I actually haven't done much guns, or many guns, to be honest. But I don't know if that's what you're referring to. Mr. Manson, can you give a superficial explanation about what is shape language on this project? Yeah, I mean, I guess a superficial explanation would be that depending on what shapes you use, every shape or every geometric shape would have probably a different connotation or like a different meaning for the viewer. So something very very sharp and pointy is generally associated with something that is quite any angular bit is associated with something that is dangerous. Like if you think a knife, for example, whereas something more rounded and softer shapes could be something a little bit more gentle in that matter. So that's a very very superficial, like you said, a very high level overview of what the shapes, like the shape language, would be in this project. So I'm trying to generate contrast. One of the things that I really like to emphasize in the work that I do is contrast, and the contrast could be it could be achieved with something very subtle. So like I said, transitioning between the shapes, or the difference between a more blobby area and a sharper line. So if you look at this one from this angle, I'm just gonna see if this makes sense. I'm just gonna show you like how I'm trying to generate contrast with this really quickly. But then you have the kind of like the main lines. So or the main shapes. So you could reduce this to a couple of blocks. Right? If anything, another one here. So these are kind of like the main shapes, and from an angle, this is also a block. So you can super simplify this, and this is also how I started from the beginning, right? When I started with this gun, I just block things like this, just based on the most high level or generic shapes for the primary shapes to get the silhouette right? To understand what I wanted to do with the silhouette. Then you can have these other lines, which are kind of like the lines that fluid within the design. And this is what I'm trying to convey, I guess. So although the primary shapes are very, very strong in terms of very blocky, you can identify them as squares or rectangulars. The lines in between, or the connecting lines, they're more organic, and that's what I'm trying to do with the more organic shapes. They sort of like flow into each other, and it helps the viewer, or at least that's what I'm trying to do. It helps the viewer to analyze the details. So you don't have lines, for example. I don't know if this is going to make sense again, but because it's very high level, but you don't have lines that sort of shoot out this way, right? Because that tends to guide the viewer outside of the model, or outside of what the object is. So all the lines that I'm doing, they're kind of like helping you to flow back, like your view, it'll help the viewer to go around the entire design, basically help guide the viewer's attention to the different parts of this model. So that's why, I don't know if this makes sense anyway, but all these lines, they kind of like flow back in, right? They're kind of like curvy. So it's just another way to sort of frame the details and frame the model. I don't know if that makes any sense, and hopefully that gives an idea of what this is kind of like what goes on in my head when I'm designing these type of things. But it's something that, to be honest, it doesn't happen necessarily consciously. It's just when I'm analyzing the design from different angles, I decide maybe this looks better like this. And then once I finish, it's like, all right, it looks better because there might be some theory behind it. I guess that's the response. I just saw something actually that I would like to add here. Oh, by the way, sorry, I don't know if that clears the question. It's a very high level sort of explanation of what I'm trying to do. I just want to do something here. Just want to rotate from this angle, so I wanted to do this gap. Again, this is something that I saw when I was just explaining or giving you an idea of the lines, that this is something that could work quite nicely. And then just use the clay brush here. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. Pablo has many tutorial videos available. It's worthwhile looking for them. Cheers, James. Thank you. How is that application called to draw? This one is called Epic Pen. It's a really cool little app. I get asked about this application at least once per stream. It's pretty funny. Mr. Mason, muito obrigado. De nada. All right. So I think we are good to go. I mean, we've done this kind of like in an hour. Let's go ahead and do a couple of things just to, again, fine-tune the block out of the design. And then we can start refining some shapes. Like I said, the cylinders, which are pretty featured. I don't know why I have 5 here. Oh, okay, so this is just by itself. Cool. All right. So we'll do these ones separately, and then we'll fine tune this shape here to integrate them a little bit more. But what I really want to do, if I bring in the plane and I just go into solo mode, hang on, select the plane, go into solo mode. What I really want to do is create this type of, you know, sections that are kind of embedded into the gun, especially these ones. And again, this is gonna help with what I was mumbling about the shape language before. So I have this kind of like rounded shape here. These soft, both are soft rounded shapes in here, and that kind of goes with the other areas. And like I said as well, I'm trying to generate some contrast in. And contrast can be generated in a whole bunch of different ways. In this case, what I'm trying to do is contrast a very soft curve into a very soft curve into a more sharper line. So if you, for example, have a look at these ones, right? All of these are very kind of like organic, soft shapes, and then they meet these more, you know, harder lines. So that's going to create some nice contrast that will help to guide the viewer. So that is the idea. We're going to go ahead and do this right now. Cool. So I'm going to start with obviously the big one, and that will give us a good visual reference of where to place the rest. So for that, what I'm going to do is go down the bottom, select the last piece, which in this case is this one, and I'm going to append a sphere. I mean, it doesn't have, you could be in any subtool really. Just gonna append a sphere. There we go. Do a quick save just in case. And let's go ahead and bring in the gizmo, scale that down. I'm gonna work on the other side of the model, as in without seeing the plane. You know what? In fact, I'm just gonna do something else. I'm gonna take my plane, which is this one here, and I'm gonna push this one back a bit because I have geometry. Sorry, I have the perspective of. I can just simply snap it to the view, and you still see where to place it. But that allows me to have a better idea of where I'm placing this sphere. Right. So can just scale it down, something like that, forward. So this sphere is going to be not necessarily the shape that's going to be in, it's going to be the one that I'm going to use to Boolean out this whole area to make it hollow, or not hollow, but just create that indentation. Alright, so now that I use this plane as a reference to generate the kind of like the size, so that the size is right, I can go back from this side and then start pushing this in. All right. Now, before we get started with the booleans, what I want to do is organize these into a couple of folders so that we can boolean out different parts. So let's see. I think what I'll do is I'm going to select this mesh, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this B1. I don't have any names for this one. I'm going to select this other one. Now this one is not affected. This one, drop it in there as well. This one too. So I'm just selecting the pieces that will be affected by the different Boolean shapes that I'm gonna make, and just put them within the same folder. All right. So if I turn this off, right. So you'll see I just selected the pieces that will potentially be affected by this sphere that I'm gonna use as a Boolean. Right. So these are all living within a single folder. Cool. So the next thing I want to do is push this down. I'm going to take this folder and just put it at the bottom, just so that it's easy to maneuver. And I think that's it. Oh, let's open that folder, of course, and let's go ahead and push this cylinder, the sphere inside. So now that this is in, I'm gonna turn this into a subtraction mesh. So it's gonna subtract anything that is above it, right? So this sphere is gonna be subtracted from anything that's at the top. Now let's go ahead and turn on booleans. I'm gonna do a quick save just in case. Pablo, you're on crack. I'm actually in water at the moment. Said Gamma, hey Pablo, how you going? It is going inspired by the cepilladora manual. I don't know what that is. it's definitely inspired in something weird. Don't know. All right, so I'm gonna take this here and I'm gonna enable live booleans. So you see now like sphere cutting into this mesh. I'm gonna go into, actually let's duplicate this, right? And this mesh, I'm gonna also put it into this folder. And this is cool because this sphere sits exactly in the same place as the Boolean one, but this one is set to the normal append, or the normal intersection, I think it is. So hang on, no, intersection, subtraction, addition. I forgot the name. Anyway, this is the normal way, so you won't be able to see it. But because it's below the other sphere, you can see it. So what I'll do is I'll bring the gizmo and scale it proportionally so you can see exactly where it sits, and then you only see that little gap behind it. Now, with this sphere already in place, which is kind of like what I want, we can go ahead and select this other one, the one that we're using to subtract everything, and we can play around with a few things. If you want to see the mesh, the Boolean mesh while you're working, you can turn on polyframe, and that should allow you to see it. So one thing I want to do is, I don't really mind not seeing it at this point. I'm going to bring in the move brush, and we can start moving this mesh, and because it is a subtraction, you'll see in real time how are we carving into the mesh. So if you wanted to do something like that, that's pretty much what you can do. And you can turn this into a Dynamesh, anything that you want, and then it will pretty decent. I'm gonna undo that. Instead, what I'll do is that it's getting a little bit laggy here. Process always it's a bit more taxing on the when I'm doing the live stream. So I'm gonna try to keep it simple. So I'm gonna just push this sphere like that. And remember, I'm just moving the sphere that I have as a Boolean mesh. So it's kind of like almost like a perfect sphere here at the top, but then at the bottom it just becomes this thing. I'm afraid that, okay, let's go into solo mode here. And like I said, this one can be done or can be used as a Dynamesh. So let's polish that. So you can stretch it as much as you want. I'm not sure about this little gap here. I'm gonna go into solo mode, just keep it simple. Alright, let's leave it like that. I'm gonna turn off live booleans for now, so it doesn't get that laggy. I'm gonna do a quick save. And then I'm gonna take the other sphere, the one that right now is kind of like inside this mesh, and I'm gonna duplicate that, turn that into a subtraction as well, but put it inside this folder. And I'm gonna bring in the Gizmo 3D, and this is the one that I'm gonna use to, let's go to the other side so that we can see the sketch. Scale that down, Right, so now this is that's the idea, just to place these shapes roughly where I placed them originally with the sketch, and then go to the other side and use them to subtract. Maybe push this one a bit more like that. There we go. And I'm gonna hold Control. If you have the gizmo selected and you hold Control and click and drag, it allows you to duplicate within the same subtool. So now I have two spheres in the same place, and I'm gonna use this one to place this one, the other one at the bottom. All right, and then I'm gonna just move it in place. In this case, I wanna affect this big part of the model. I wanna cut this out, but I don't wanna cut the entire thing. So something that we can do is, in this case, we can bring in the deformers, and I'm gonna use the flattened version, the flattened deformer, this one, and I'm gonna click on this cone, and this is basically gonna flatten this from this angle. So I can just do something like that, maybe. So it eats into this shape a tiny bit. I'm not sure. Maybe not. Maybe something like that. Yeah, something like that should be fine. And then click accept. So now it's not a sphere, it's kind of like a half sphere, but these two spheres are living in the same kind of like area. So let's go ahead. Actually, just for the sake of making things interesting, I'm gonna invert the mask. So now I'm selecting the first one that I selected, bring in the gizmo, center that to the unmask area with this little icon here. Do the same thing, the same process, just bring in the flatten deformer. And by the way, you can do this with the live booleans. I just don't want to do it right now because it really makes the computer lag a little bit. So I'm just going to flatten this a tiny bit. So you see the effect is going to be a little bit different. Clear the mask, get out of solo mode, and now let's go ahead and duplicate this mesh. And this is going to be the same thing as what I did before. So I duplicated just to have the same parts a little bit smaller. So I'm going to turn this one off for just a second. Enable live booleans, and you'll see the effect of these meshes. So now what I can see here is that this area, it's not looking as good, but what we can do instead of changing the sphere is I'm going to increase the size of an area in here. I'm going to go into solo mode, go to my mask tools, click and drag. Actually, let's just do it from an angle here. Alright, so something like that, sharpen that, invert that selection or that mask, bring in the gizmo, center that to the unmasked areas, and hang on, I have symmetry. We can just push it out like so. No, actually, we can do that, but I like to keep this as it is, so let's go ahead and mask this area as well. Alright. Okay, so now this should look a little bit better when we bring in the boolean. Let's go ahead and clear that mask, and before we dynamesh, let's see how this looks with the live boolean. You see it has that like nice shape, so that's cool. Let's go ahead and redynamesh, so we have this area right there. Cool. So let's double check the design, see if we have to do any other kind of like boolean operation. Maybe one here just for this join. I still don't know. I don't know if you guys added. I'm not sure if you saw. Can the sphere be moved while being live boolean? Absolutely. That's one of the key features. The problem is that my computer gets a little bit slow when I use live boolean for some reason and I'm streaming. It doesn't happen when I'm not streaming. So I'm sure it is something to do with the streaming, because just it's very taxing on the system, I guess. But yeah, so I'm gonna show you just quickly. I'm gonna do one here for this area, and then another one here. And that one I can probably show you how to do it, so that it doesn't. I'll show you how to sculpt in Boolean mode, basically. Let's see if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna get out of solo mode here, and let's go to. Oh, before I do that, actually, let me just go into transparent mode, and I'm gonna select these spheres that right now they sit right in the same spot. I'm just gonna bring in the gizmo and scale them down a little bit. Invert the masking, select center, and scale that down as well. Get out of this transparent mode. So now all I did was what I did with the other sphere. So if we wanted to, we can just combine these two so that it's easy to understand what I'm doing. So I have two Boolean meshes. I'm just gonna mesh these down. Right. So these three spheres are Boolean, this entire area, and then I have this one which I can mesh down with these other ones, and they are duplicate of these three spheres but slightly shrinked. So let's turn Booleans. This is how the mesh is looking. All right, so pretty decent. Let's go ahead and do one more here at the back. So for this, I'm going to use a cylinder instead of a sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and append cylinder, select the cylinder, go into Gizmo, scale that down. Holding Shift, if you hold Shift, you will snap to integer numbers, so 90 degrees. So that's just easier to play around with this. I'm going to do a quick save. Cool, and I'm going to scale this down. And I'm just going to move this in place. So this cylinder is the one that I'm going to use to kind of like create this shape. Yeah, something like that. Now to answer some of your questions before about if you can move things where they're still in the Booleans, yes, so the answer is yes, but you can also do a whole bunch of other stuff. Like you can use C-modeler, for example, and that's what I'm going to use here. This is what I'll do. I'll explain it before. So I have a series of faces around this cylinder. So I'm going to select a few of these faces here, right? And I'm going to extrude them so that I can get a kind of like this shape, and that is going to help me fine-tune this shape. So when I Boolean this area, it's going to look kind of like that. Right, so all of these one is going to be hollow, but I'm going to keep this shape of the cylinder and the extruded parts. So I'm going to show you that. Let's go into solo. Actually, before we go into solo mode, let's turn on this polyframe. I should have deleted some. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to go into my C-modeler brush, and I'm going to select a quick reference to know where I'm going to extrude them. Now I'm going to solo mode. So I need to select all of these ones, and what I'm going to do is tag them with Alt key. So with the C-modeler selected, you can hold the Alt key and then temporarily assign this polygroup. It's just a white polygroup that once you do an action, then it will be, deleted. It's just a temporary polygroup, but it's super handy. It's one of the tools that I use the most, especially with the C-modeler. Alright, so you'll see I just tagged these polygons, and now we can go ahead and right click on a mesh, make sure the Q mesh is selected, click and drag, and it just creates this shape. Right. So obviously that's not necessarily the shape that I'm after. It's way bigger. But I just wanted to do it like that so that I can turn Booleans and then show you in real time how I would affect it. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Control and right click, Control to mask that area, invert that masking, bring in the gizmo, center that to this unmasked area, and I can just, you know, play around with the scaling or whatever it is, and that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Play around with the scaling of this and rotation. But I'm going to do that in the Boolean mode. So I'm going to turn off polyframe. Hopefully it's not going to get too slow. I'm going to do a quick save just in case. All right. One thing though is that, let's see, I'm going to turn off this. Okay, no, it's fine. I just wanted to double check that this mesh will affect the actual group that we did with the booleans and not everything else. So I'm gonna chuck this one in here, and I'm gonna turn that into booleans, or like subtraction, and then live booleans. So you'll see it's just cutting all this piece, but because remember I took this piece and I masked only this cylinder part, I can go ahead and then scale this down and move this everywhere. So that is essentially what I want to do. There you go. Pretty simple. So this is a Boolean mesh that is subtracting this, and you can actually, let's clear the mask, and you can move things around, right? And whatever you want to put this gap, it's fine. So I'm going to undo that. This is something that I wanted to show, or that's the reason why I created that group. If you move this mesh, it's going to affect all these parts, because all these parts are within this Boolean, well, it's not a Boolean folder, but they're within that folder. But if I move this down here, this mesh is not affecting anything else, because these parts are not part of the group. So that's why I did the group originally. There we go. Also, let's turn Booleans off. You see the mesh, it's alright. It's not too bad. And yeah, so once we do the Booleans, we'll be able to redynamize this as well and clean it up a little bit. So I think we're in a good shape to move forward. The other Booleans that I want to use, they're going to be more details or insert meshes that we can use in the next stream. So we have about half an hour. That's great, because we're going to combine these, and then we're going to fine tune and start doing more of the organic modeling and detailing, which is will be the next part. So I'm going to go into more like the secondary, almost tertiary shapes, I would say, at this point, and that's going to be more on the sculpting. Alrighty. If you guys have any questions or want to know something about this process, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to Boolean this out and then move forward. So one thing I want to do before I do anything else is obviously duplicate that, or have this as a, you know, a mirror and weld, so that I have these on both sides. And that's really about everything. That's pretty much what I wanted to do, I think. Oh, there's one more thing that I forgot. So remember I mentioned here at the back, we have kind of like these, I don't know, it could be something like some kind of mechanism that allows this part to be folded for some reason. Again, I don't know much about guns, and I haven't done the research, but it's something that in I don't know about the design, but it's something that it could be folded to put it away. But then I'm thinking that if it's meant to be the part of the gun that it's going to be in the shoulder to help with the recoil or whatever, it needs to be pretty sturdy and strong. So it could be, anyway, it could be a mechanism to reinforce that or something like that. So just for the sake of the design, I'm gonna place a Boolean here just to show you something else. And it's pretty simple, really. All we have to do is mask this mesh. Actually, this is just a single mesh, so we don't need to mask it. It's just by itself. And I'm going to turn Booleans on, bring in the gizmo, and I'm going to hold Control and click, and that duplicates that mesh. So I can just place it in here, right? Turn Booleans off. And the reason it's not being affected is because this is in a separate, this mesh behind it is not within this mesh. So one thing we can do is, just to make it simpler, we can select, let's bring in, hang on a second, let's select this mesh, right, just here, and I'm gonna hold shift and click on one of these arrows, and that will shift that all the way to the bottom. So you can use these arrows to move it up or down, but if you press shift and click on them, it will just send it all the way to the top, or shift down all the way to the bottom. So I'm gonna put this one above the booleans, just right there. So now if we select this other mesh, we turn live booleans, now it is being affected. So before I do anything else, I'm just gonna bring in the gizmo, and I'm just gonna scale that down. Okay, so I'm gonna place this somewhere around there, and I'm gonna take advantage of the shapes that I already extruded, but I'm gonna scale that down and place it, well, not, we don't have to scale it, we're just gonna place it around there. I think maybe a bit more, and let's have a look and see how it looks with the live boolean. Yep. So again, if I wasn't streaming, I would probably just leave the live booleans and permanently have the view of the live booleans and affecting. But because again, it just makes it a little bit harder when I'm streaming, that's why I turn it on and off. But otherwise, in a more normal workflow, I would just keep it on all the time, and it's not a problem. All right, so let's clear that mask, view live boolean. That's it. So I think we are ready. We're going to mirror and weld all these elements that I'm going to be subtracting. So all we have to do is select. In fact, we can combine everything that's going to be a boolean, but I'm just going to leave it separately for the time being, and I'm going to show you something, a different technique. So I'm going to select that one, go into mirror and weld. So now they're on the other side. And for you guys, mirror and weld should be on the geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld. Cool. And I'm going to do the same thing with these spheres, mirror and weld. So now we have them in both sides. So if I do live boolean, here is a little problem. See, right here in the middle, these two spheres, let's get out of boolean. These two spheres, when I mirror and weld, if I go into solo mode, they're being connected. So they're going to create a hollow area, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to undo that. I just undo the mirror and weld, and with this one, I can bring in the gizmo, bring in the flatten, and do the same thing that I did for this, but for the big one. So something around there, and I'm going to bring everything else, turn off live boolean, and you'll see you can still play around with this in boolean mode. So you can flatten this like that, or not. I'm just going to, I just wanted to show you that you can also work with this in boolean with live booleans enabled. But this is really all I want to do. Just flatten this and accept that, and that way when I mirror and weld this part, you'll have this little gap. Oh, like, yeah, this part in the middle. So let's go ahead and get out of solo mode and do another check, live boolean, and everything is looking pretty decent at this point. Cool. So I'm going to do a quick save. Right, so what we're going to do now is convert all these live booleans that we did into actual geometry, so that we can redynamize it if we need to, and then keep adding details and start the sculpting part. Hopefully we have time to do a couple of things. I think so. I'm going to show you a bit of the sculpting part, like just to sculpt the details, and then I'm going to show you another technique that you could have used actually. If you check the previous stream of how we started with this gun, I did kind of like I show you like a manual retopology. It's a technique that you can use for manual retopology. It's not manual retopology, but it's just to draw some polygons and then you can extrude, and that's how we created all these the main shapes or the primary shapes. But you can do the same thing with the Snapshot 3D, and the Snapshot 3D is something that is extremely powerful, and I'm going to show you a cool technique to add some details and fine tune these areas here. So let's just go ahead and do that. So because we have everything within a folder, what I want to do is Boolean that folder so we have everything into a single piece. And before I do that, I'm going to select the spheres, so these ones that you can see here, and I'm going to take them out of the folder, because if I leave them inside the folder and I Boolean the folder, then these spheres also are going to get caught, or it's going to be considered within the Boolean operation. I just want to be able to have the full sphere if I want to move it or whatever I want to do. Cool. So now I have this folder, and all I want to do is click on this cog icon, right? And here we have this amazing feature called Boolean Folder. So the Boolean Folder will apply the Boolean operation to whatever is inside that folder, but it's going to keep all the originals within the folder, and it's going to create a new mesh from that operation. So let's go ahead and click Boolean Folder, and that's it. We have our mesh here that we can play around with. So I'm going to get out of this live Boolean, and I'm going to take this folder all the way up, right? And I'm just going to rename it. To rename a folder, by the way, you have to do it from this cog icon. So it's not there's not like a button here to. So if you click rename, it's not going to rename the folder. It's going to rename whatever subtool you have selected here. So if you want to rename the entire folder, click on this cog icon here and go to rename folder. I'm going to call this originals, right? So I know that I have the original pieces here in case I want to change something and do another Boolean. But now we have this single mesh. If I go into solo, this is now a single mesh, right? And this is how it is currently looking. That we can potentially redynamesh or manually do the retopology, but I don't want to do any of that. I want to keep it as a dynamesh object. And if you don't want to redynamesh everything, if you're happy with how everything else is looking, you could just go into Sculptris Pro mode. So I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm going to go into, I'm going to select maybe the clay brush, right? And then let's say I want to start sculpting and fixing these areas. I can go ahead and click on the Sculptris Pro mode, and this is what this is going to be doing. It's going to be adding more geometry, so you don't have to worry about redynamashing or anything else. So oops, let's turn off polyframe. So I'm just going to start doing that in this area, and with the smooth brush, this is something that sometimes happens. You have some holes when you do a dynamesh process or a Boolean operation. So these little holes is not a big deal. All we have to do is go to mesh integrity. Sorry, not mesh integrity. Modify topology under the geometry palette, and let's click on close holes. So this button here will close any holes, and it should have a different polygroup like you see here, but that's not a big deal. You can just redynamesh the entire thing or keep using the Sculptris Pro. That's it. So in these very sharp edges, like I said, I don't want to have this sharpness. I'm going to go ahead and hold Shift and smooth this edge using the Sculptris Pro. And this is why Sculptris Pro is so good. So I start with Dynamesh so that I can maintain a uniform kind of topology. But then when I'm doing these kind of refinements, that's when I can switch to Sculptris Pro. And I really don't have to worry about the topology at all. So I'm using the smooth brush again to fine tune this ball. Then I'm using the clay brush to add a bit of volume. Nothing else. Let's do the same thing here. And also this part or this stage of the process that I'm doing here is also to help with that effect of keeping everything very organic, so that I have something that suggests is kind of like a strong panel or a hard surface panel, but it's not all the way, if that makes any sense. Alright, so let's just think through a bit here what we can do in terms of details. I'm also pressing the Alt key with the clay brush, so that sort of creates this little bump here, but also flatten that area. All right, let's do the same thing around here. And the good thing about this process as well is that once we do, if we wanted to redynamize this, for example, it's all these borders are going to be quite smooth as well. I think that's it for the. I mean, you have all these borders as well that we can sort of fine tune a bit more. So again, they look part of the same. So they're kind of like blending with this area. There's some other areas that need a bit of tweaking as well, like here. See here, for example, you can see the faceted polygons from the cylinder that we use for the Boolean operation, so we can just very easily smooth all that. So basically what I'm showing you is just a bunch of different techniques and workflows that you can use to achieve very similar result. But ultimately, it's going to be up to you if you wanna do something similar, to choose one that works for you. Sometimes having the ability to switch between different workflows and different tools gives you a wider range of tools, obviously, to find the right shape or the right look and feel for your work. So that's why I like to keep everything very fluid in terms of the different types of processes that I use. All right, cool. So let's do also a bit of tweaking here at the top. For this part, I'm just going to bring in the edge polish, and the edge polish is just fantastic for this type of things. I'm going to turn off Sculpt Pro so it is faster. And this is a tool that I would use to, help with that more hard surface part of the design, I guess, to flatten some areas. So for example, in here, in these two little bumps that I created, they're like a little bit blobby right now, but if I go ahead and use the edge polish, I can just flatten and create some nice planes for it. Let me undo that, because there we go. Right, so it still looks a little bit, hard surface, but there is this nice kind of like soft transition between the shapes that it makes it feel a little bit more organic. Similar to this area here, you can just go ahead and with the edge polish, just flatten that area. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let's have a look. So we have about 20 minutes. I wanted to show you a couple more things before wrapping it up today. Forgot this area here as well. Turn off Sculpt Pro. Alrighty. Now the Sculpt Pro sometimes gives you even more holes, like in this case, but like I showed you, it's very easy. Just go close holes, and that should do it. They need to be big enough. If not, they'll just get fixed once we do the Dynamesh, if you want to turn this into a Dynamesh again. So for now, I think this is looking pretty good. We could potentially use the edge polish to flatten some areas here before we move forward, just to define some of these planes on this going a bit more. because I mean I do want to have that feeling of an organic shape and keep some bits that are like hard surface, but I want to make sure that everything is kind of like intentional and not that it doesn't feel like, oh, this is just a sketch, it doesn't look completed. I want to make sure that whatever I do looks intentional, and that's why I'm refining these bits. Cool. So I think I'm going to leave it there, like this part, and then I'm going to show you, the snapshot 3D and how you add a few other shapes, as well as the cylinders. So if we don't have time, I think we have time. I'm going to show you the snapshot 3D first, and then the cylinder bit. Cool. So get out of solo mode. I'm going to turn off the sketch. Let's do a quick save. And to be honest, at this point, I don't even know if I'm going to use the sketch or not. I forgot to do a mirror and weld of the actual spheres, but I just saw that this one is a little bit too. It needs to be a bit embedded, and it's probably not going to be a sphere. Let's just go ahead and select these, which are the 3 spheres, and do a mirror and weld, so we have them on the other side. And then we just need to fix this gap and do something for this area as well. So what I'll do is append a cylinder 3D. There we go. Scale this down using the Gizmo 3D. Hold Shift to rotate 90 degrees, and I'm just going to place this roughly in there, just like a little outline of this sphere. And this is going to be the tool that I'm going to use to create kind of like the casing of what this sphere is being held from, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks alright. And I'm going to do the same thing, hold Control, click and drag, and that just duplicates, or should duplicate it. Hold Control, click and drag, and it's duplicating that cylinder. I'm going to place it here, do the same thing basically. Alright, so that's kind of like the cylinder that holds the 2 spheres, and I'm going to reduce them a bit. In fact, I think I'm going to select the spheres, and I'm going to select this polygroup, because they have different polygroups. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift, select that one, hold Control, click anywhere outside the canvas to create a mask, bring everything back, invert the masking, and then I'm going to bring in everything again. And what I'll do is, using the gizmo with symmetry also enabled, I'm going to push this in a little bit more. Alright, so I think that makes more sense. I'm going to scale them up a bit. There we go. Alright, so now we have these these cylinders, which I probably want to do is go into the geometry palette, turn them into a Dynamesh object, but with a higher resolution, a bit more than that, a bit more than that. Alright, that looks good. And then with symmetry enable, I'm going to go ahead and smooth all of this. I mean, if you want to keep it very, very, I don't know, hard surface, you could just leave the cylinders as they are and then do a Dynamesh or something like that. I just want to keep that feel of an organic shape. Again, I keep saying the same thing. So it is a cylinder, but if you really pay attention to it, it might have, you know, some blobbiness to it, and that's kind of like what I'm going for, really. So a bit softer, especially around the edges. And that's it. Maybe we can even use the move brush to play with the transitions, like I said before, on these areas. redynamesh that. Redynamesh again. There we go. And I think for some reason I'm going to increase the resolution a bit more. Alright, so I think this is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add some details, maybe to this area here, using the Snapshot 3D. So what I want to do now first, before we get started, is I was going to organize them in folders, but I mean, this is something that you probably know how to do, and I'm not going to waste time on that. We have about 10 minutes, so I'll just show you the Snapshot 3D, and then we do the cylinders and something else in the next stream when we're going to add more of the details. So Snapshot 3D is absolutely fantastic. What I'll do is select something like this mesh, and based on that one, doesn't really matter. You can select anything, but one thing that you wanna keep in mind is that the Snapshot 3D is going to see whatever subtool you have selected, and based on the width or the depth really of this mesh is gonna create the new mesh, or the new projected mesh. When you have combined the booleans, hang on a second, I think I missed a few. No. When you have combined booleans but want to separate it and you don't have the originals, can you split the pieces, or they wield it permanently? You can split it if you have polygroups. The problem is that once you split it, that area that you split it from, or where you split those booleans meshes, they're gonna have they're not gonna have anything. They're basically gonna be hollow. So you have to either run a close hole process and then redynamesh. Yeah, I think that's what I would do if I needed to separate them. But that's the reason why I always keep the originals, or I would work in a separate file. Or you can just simply save before you do the booleans, and then have two different subtools, two different files, one with the Boolean operation already applied on the previous one. But the easiest way is just to have everything in the folder. Next stream, cylinders. I'll promise we'll get into the cylinders next stream. I just want to show you the snapshot, because it's gonna be it's something really powerful. Let's go ahead and bring in the spotlight. So in the texture palette, you can click on this Lightbox Spotlight, and this is just a pre-prepared kind of like series of spotlights, and they're just done by the Pixology guys, and they're pretty cool. There's also these ones that I forgot his name, and maybe Anthony. Sorry, I forgot the name. But this is one of the beta testers. When we were testing this version of ZBrush, he did this really cool sci-fi stuff. So we're probably gonna use some of them to detail the mesh. I just wanna use the most basic ones, which are these ones here. So if you double click this, ZBrush is gonna load this set of tools that we can use to generate more meshes and more complexity to this mesh. So something we can do, for example, is maybe work on the kind of like the aim, or something a little bit more interesting, a more interesting aim for this gun here. In fact, I'm just gonna select this guy here, bring in the gizmo, and I think we can just push this back a little bit. I think that looks better. And then what we can do is work on a more interesting shape here. All right, so what I want to do is bring in all these meshes. The way that this works is pretty simple. If you hold once you have the spotlight loaded, or the images, if you press Z in your keyboard, you bring in kind of like the editing circle, or the editing tools for the spotlight. If you press Z again, you can keep working and then have this as a reference. Hang on a second, I forgot that I have all these over the chat. It's gonna be a little bit hard. You know what? I'm gonna turn off the chat just for this bit. All right. So just so that you guys can see what I'm doing here. Yep. And then if you hold Shift and Z, that's basically turning off the spotlight, which is the one that I have in here, that little button here. All right, so let's go into the editing mode of these meshes, of these images, and I'm going to select maybe. Let's go ahead and let's see. I'm going to select this one, right? You can just click on it on any image and then move it around, but I don't want to destroy the original. So what I can do is there is this button here, duplicate, and that will duplicate whatever image you have selected. So I'm going to click on this one, duplicate that. So now it is a duplicate image, and I'm going to click on this circle right in the middle, the bluish one, and just snap it to the center. It's going to snap automatically, and this is going to be kind of like the aim of this gun. So I need to probably do it from this angle, really. Makes more sense, right? All right. So I'm going to select these, and you'll see there are some snapping points to the actual mesh that you have selected. So right now it's not displaying it right in the middle because I think I have symmetry enabled. Or I don't. Let's see. Oh, right. So I did this on one side. So let's go ahead and mirror and weld. So at least we have a consistent volume on both sides. Now it should do it. Oh. There we go. All right. So now I can snap it right to the center of this mesh. Right, that green one, and then we can, oops, do it again. We can use any of these tools to scale it. So this one right here is just going to scale everything up, but what I want to do is scale it upwards. So we can use any of these tools. So this one is going to extend it. This one is going to flip it, and if you hold Shift. So let me just start again. So this one right here is basically going to, from this point in the middle, is going to extend this image, which is super useful, right? If you hold Shift, it's just going to scale it, right? It's not going to extend it, it's just going to scale that. And the same thing for this area, right? So let's just go ahead and set something like that, right? And if we click on this camera, it's just going to create a new subtool based on the distance of the one that we have selected. So it's going to have this shape, but it's going to have the length of the one that you have selected, right? So if you want to make it a bit smaller, you can select this one, which is a bit shorter, but that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and click on this camera, just one single click, and you'll see ZBrush creates this automatically. So now we have this really cool shape. I'm gonna center it, and I can reposition this if I wanted to, and this is gonna be our aim. So this is the one that I'm gonna use here for the kind of like the aim. We can scale it up a bit as well, something like that. So I'm gonna use this maybe, I'm not sure. No, maybe somewhere there, right? But now the great thing about this is that we can just keep playing around with the Spotlight 3D. So what I'll do before I continue is I'm going to make this into its own folder so that all of these Boolean operations and everything happens within a folder. So I'm going to click new folder. I'm going to call this aim. I think that's what it's called, really. I don't know, the aim. I'm going to solo mode. No, not going to solo mode. I just want to make sure I only have this one visible, right? Cool. So then the next thing I want to do is bring in the spotlight again, and this time actually I don't know if it's too clear for you guys, so I'm gonna get a little bit closer. There we go. Alright, so I'm gonna snap it to the center, the same kind of like the same aim, and I'm gonna scale that up like so. And then we have this really cool tool inside inside Spotlight 3D, which is the frame. So this one right here, we click and drag. It's just gonna create this kind of like paneling effect. And not only that, which is cool about this, is that you can hold the Alt key and the Shift key, and then those modifiers will change how it works. So if I hold Shift, it's just gonna inflate it, like you see here. If I hold Alt, it's just gonna deflate it or shrink it. So it's really powerful. Let's just do something like that. Maybe push it. Maybe push it forward a bit. Sorry, upwards. All right. So in this case, what I want to do. Oops. Oh, always forget to do that. What I want to do this one is use the live booleans to subtract this panel from this entire thing. So I can hold the Alt key and then use the snapshot 3D, right? So the same camera effect the same camera button that I used to create this one, but this time I'm gonna hold the Alt key and click, and ZBrush is gonna, did it do it? Hang on. Is it adding anything? I'm confused now. It's not doing it. Maybe it's... I wonder if maybe I've done something wrong. It should just create another one. Not sure what I'm doing wrong. There we go. I don't know what happened there. Maybe with the mouse or something. Anyway, so I click Alt and click on this camera, and it creates the same mesh, but it creates it as a boolean, right? So it's the same length as the one that I had selected. So what I want to do is bring in the gizmo. I'm going to move a little bit faster here because I need to wrap it up now. So it did create something. That's the problem. All right, so this should have different polygroups. If not, let's go ahead and hide these ones. I'm just gonna delete these ones, these polygroups. I don't know why they were created, but all right, cool. Let's go back to where we were. All right, so we're gonna use this one to subtract, to create like a little paneling effect. So you'll see because this is already as a boolean, or it's treated as a boolean, I'm going to turn live boolean, and I can push this how much you wanna, how deep this panel is gonna be created, right? So I just wanna do something like that. Cool. Let's go ahead and continue really quickly. Bring in same thing here, but this time actually I like this frame. I'm gonna keep it there, but I'm gonna do another one of this. Another one of the original shapes, duplicate that, chuck it in here, scale that up, and this is kind of this is going to be the kind of like the glass or whatever, I don't know, the display or this gun. But then I'm going to scale these, extend, sorry, in the y-axis, so contract this a little bit. Like so, and then maybe it's too much, and then in the x-axis as well. All right, so now let's go ahead and hold the Alt key and click to create it. So this is subtracting as well, right? And there we go. Push it forward, scale it down. Actually, I'm going to get out of live boolean so I can see the size of this. Right, I'm just scaling it in one axis. That's all I'm doing. Right, so that is kind of like what I want, but I might want to just change the inclination of this, just have like a bit of an angle. So I'm going to go into solo mode here, and I'm going to use the clip brushes, my clip brush, so Control Shift and click to access the clip brushes, and I'm going to clip this around there. Not there, sorry, not the clip brush, the trim curve, that's the one that I want to use. Control Shift, click and drag. The side of the shadow of this little shaded line is where ZBrush is going to cut. So somewhere around there, and it just cuts it right there. And then get out of solo mode, go back into live booleans, and you'll see now that when I push it, it's going to create this nice sort of like angle shape in there. Cool. And the good thing about booleans as well is that as you design, maybe I decided that this panel is maybe too embedded, so I can just select that object, bring in the gizmo, and then refine this slightly like that. And that's it. Let's go ahead and do a couple more things just to finish this up, this really quick shape. And I'm going to use, let's have a look. I'm going to use this one, right, this shape, and I'm going to extend it. So I'm going to click on this one, on this extend edge. It's quite a bit. There we go, extend it maybe a little bit more. And I'm going to rotate it around. And maybe extend it in the y-axis as well. Alright, so I'm going to use this as a kind of like a panel effect to cut into the model. So I'm going to hold Alt, click the Snapshot 3D, and is it here? Hang on. There we go. It's this one right here, but it's a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to scale it. Oops. Scale this one up. Hang on a second. I lost my gizmo. Alright, so I'm just going to scale this in the Z-axis. So now it just clips all of this, and then I can just move things around and see how much of this I actually want. So I want to maybe keep it a little bit like that, scale it in the X-axis. So again, I'm very organically kind of like designing as I go, right? But we already have this shape, so we don't have to do another snapshot 3D. We can simply duplicate this mesh, turn it into a live boolean, and we can just push it on the side like so. Maybe scale it down, and we can use this as another paneling effect here. Something like that. We can even just rotate it. Let's go ahead and rotate it 15-20 degrees. Right, so that has like a nice little angle here. And I'm just working on one side, and then a little bit sluggish again because of the live boolean. But I can take this mesh and do mirror and weld, and you'll see I have it on the same side, and when I get out of solo mode, it is being applied on both sides. So that is kind of like how I would go about doing this type of meshes, which is, it's a pretty cool way to do it. If I want to do something even more interesting, because right now there's no gap here, so I don't know why I did that. Let's go ahead and bring in this mesh, and I'm going to use maybe this one. Yeah, let's duplicate that one. Rotate it, scale it, rotate it 40 degrees. This is just a square. extend it. Actually, that's kind of interesting. That's not what I wanted to do, but I'm going to extend it in the y-axis as well. And I'm just going to try to position this kind of like in this area. Let's see how this looks. All right, so subtract. And now let's put that inside the right folder. Now that is subtracting kind of like a nice piece in here. I feel like we should push it out. All right, I'm already gone over a few more minutes, so I'm just gonna wrap it up here, guys. But let's just have a look, see what looks good. One thing that is probably good to do at this point is check how this piece is looking with the rest of the gun. But I just wanted to give you this initial introduction to this Snapshot 3D for other pieces that you could work on. Now the other thing we can do with this is I'm going to go into solo mode, and I'm going to mask out. Actually, before getting to solo mode, yeah, I'm just going to mask out an area here. Don't know why I cannot mask. This is strange. It's a weird behavior. I cannot mask. Oh, of course. It's not a weird behavior. There's no enough geometry in here, so I cannot mask it. Anyway, not a problem. I just want to show you something else, but it's not a big deal. So let's go ahead and Boolean this entire mesh. So this entire folder. There we go. Turn live Booleans off. And here is the piece that we end up with. Now this is what I wanted to show you, because when you work with live Booleans, and this is just to wrap up today's stream, maybe this is not going to be great here, but we'll see. So when you work with live Booleans, every mesh from kind of like every code that you do is going to end up having different polyframes, right? So this is really, really cool, because you do a whole bunch of stuff. You can already use this to do series measure and just make sure that you have everything, or you select the polish by groups and that sort of things, just to create a nice topology. But I'm not gonna use that. I'm gonna use the series measure. It's just a concept. But one thing that you can do is bevel those edges, right? And there's a really cool way to do it. Right. So maybe let's just leave it as it is like that, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So I have this piece that is already the result of the Boolean, and if I remember correctly, that is under the crease palette. So if you go to the geometry palette, click on the crease sub palette, and there is this bevel option here, which if you click it, it's just going to bevel the crease edges. But at this point, there's no creasing, or there's no edges that are creased, right? So there's no edges that are creased. So what you can do instead is hold the control key in your keyboard, and that's again one of the modifiers, and then play with the bevel. So if you hold control and click, it should bevel. It should bevel by polygroup. It's not doing it for some reason. It should do it. Hold control. Let me just double check something. I'm gonna crease by polygroup. All right, so let's bevel. Yeah, maybe it's not gonna work like this. You'll have to do Dynamesh and do it manually. But with a simple object, it would work. Let me just do one more, so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Not in this case. I just went ahead and did it to all of these ones won't really help with the bevel, and it has to be a cleaner topology, a simpler topology. But let me just show you really quickly. So let's say I don't know. let's take this one. Let's take this triangle here, right? And let's go ahead and just create one. Let's create this. So we have this triangular shape. Going to solo mode, and I'm going to frame this here. Right, so this time I think it should do it. I've done it before with like simple shapes, so that's probably why it didn't work, because I have a bunch of extra, Boolean operation with weird triangles and stuff like that. But in this case, I think it should do it. Let's go ahead and turn the line off and pay attention to the edge, and let's try that one more time. Hopefully. So on the decrease palette again, I'm going to hold Control and click on Bevel Width. There we go. Right. So it's just beveling the difference between the polygroups. So ZBrush is having a look at, I'm going to undo that. ZBrush is going to have a look at the different polygroups that you have. Because we're using the Snapshot 3D, we're going to have obviously the shape that we created, the width of, or the depth of that shape is going to be a different polygroup, and the one at the back is going to be a different one. So because we have this, we can hold Control again and click on this bevel width, and it's going to allow you to do this type of thing. Now, if I do it again, it should take into consideration these other polygons, so you can do a bit more beveling, I guess. Unless oops, oh, I went back too many times. Anyway, you know what I mean. Hold Control again, click on bevel, and that's just gonna give you that nice little bevel. Alright, so that's just another way. Let's go ahead and, just for the sake of keeping this little triangle somewhere. Alright, mirror and weld, and that's it. Let's go ahead and bring the rest of the gun. Maybe position this. We can even merge these two together, mesh down. So it's just a single piece that we can maneuver a little bit easier. And we have a bunch of extra stuff that I should delete, but I'll go ahead and do that after. Cool. What is this? Oh, these are all the originals. Fair enough. Cool. So we have this beat that, you see, just makes it, started to make it look a little bit more interesting. We have this one as well here, which we can select now, and in fact we can hold Control. Oh, come on. Control. Oh, I was selecting the wrong one. Hold Control and click on that one. And this one is not a Dynamesh, if you remember, but it doesn't matter. What I'll do is first apply dynamic subdivision, apply it, and I'm going to run Dynamesh as well. So Dynamesh, polish, Dynamesh, yes. Oh no, I should have not done that. Delete hidden, delete the lower resolution, Dynamesh again, maybe a bit more resolution. There we go. So now what I wanted to do, just to wrap it up, hold Control, probably from here, right, and I'm gonna just bring in the gizmo, center that to the unmask areas, turn symmetry off, and I'm just gonna scale this down like that. Cool. So that could be, could help with the aim, I guess. All right, clear the mask, and there we go. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up here because I went over a little bit of time, but hopefully you can see how powerful these techniques are, just to get something that looks very, very interesting and organic. I might have to, make this aim a little bit more softer and organic, but I kind of like the transitions and the contrast that these things are generating. If anything, I can just move this in a bit. But again, those are things that we can work on later on. So I'm gonna leave it here, guys, and in the next stream I'll do the cylinders and maybe add some more details. Start adding some insertions and bolts and things like that, and we can just call it finish. Again, it's just I just wanted to do something different that I don't get to play around much with this type of designs, and show you different techniques. So hopefully you found it useful today. Next stream would be, I think the schedule should be up. I have to check, but I think the new schedule for the next month should be up, or for this month should be up, and it's gonna be the same day, same time, I believe. Let me just go through the chat really quickly before we wrap it up. What's up? A bit late. Hey Mai, how's it going? Comics Legends, thanks mate. What do you? Oh, hang on, I have my chat off. All right. Where to download the Pablo ZBrush tablet UI? I haven't uploaded this one because I keep changing it. To be honest, I see if most of the things that you'll see in my UI are custom macros. So if I share these, I can share it, but it's gonna be a bunch of stuff are gonna be empty because I will have to also share the macros, and also you have to install them and all that. So that's why I don't share this one. But there's a bunch of UIs in the ZBrush guides. Just go to the ZBrush guides resources page, and if you go to the actual resource page, there's gonna be one there. Let me just show you really quickly. Comics Legend, when you duplicate your shapes, are they added to the shape library for later use? And if you're referring to the spotlight, no. So you'll have to save a new spotlight, which is very easy. Just go to texture and then save spotlight, and that will save the new shapes if you're referring to those. Hang on a second. By the way, for those who weren't here at the beginning of the stream, I was just showing, I was letting you guys know about the masterclass, the free masterclass series. That if you haven't registered, you can just do it in this couple of next days. So basically, if you go to the resource page, just click on the actual resource. So not in any of these drop downs. If you click on the resources, you can go to these. So you have a bunch of different resources. If you go to UIs, that will open up a new tab, and in here you have some custom ZBrush UI. So I have one that I used. I mean, these ones are relatively older. I use this one for 3D sketching, just very free space just for 3D sketching. This one for box modeling, so it has all the tools that I would use for box modeling. It has like material like the normal one just to check the planes and things like that. I have these for texturing and polypaint, so it is more focusing on the color tools. Like I said, these ones are for 4R8 if I'm not mistaken. So I haven't done an update of these ones for the ZBrush 2019. I probably would do one. And I have this other one for Wacom. So I have the Wacom Studio Pro. So this is an old Wacom, but this is kind of like how I organize and I work on the Wacom, just so I have more vertical space. Just basically because what I do mostly is just characters and creatures, so this format works a little bit better. So yeah, just go here, ZBrushGuides.com/ZBrushUIs, and you can get them here. You can also get ZBrush colors if you want. These are like kind of just for fun. They're not gonna change your anything really, but there's some like this high contrast. I did this one for a friend that it's kind of like I don't know exactly what he has. it's not color blindness. It's just like a bit of visual impairment. So he needs the colors. It's called accessibility, I guess. So he needs the colors to be very high contrast. So the highest contrast that you can have in terms of like accessibility and user interface is just like bright yellow and black. And that's why you see, I don't know if this is why, but I assume it is. You see the kind of like the warning signs and things like that are just white and yellow. Anyway, so this is just something that I did for him so that it's easy to visualize the stuff. But you have a bunch of, most of them are just for fun. You can just download them here. And anyway, that's it. That's it. You can just explore it on your own time. The other thing I wanted to show you is this thing. So if you go to the ZBrush guides right now, this one right here. So this masterclass series, you can just go ahead and register. So if you click on this one, it will send you to the 3dconceptartist.com free masterclass series. I'll just chuck it in here in case you wanna do it. So yeah, all you have to do is just leave your name and email, and then register, and I will send you an email as soon as it is ready. I'm wrapping up the series, so it should, if not next week, early this week, late this week, would be ready. Yeah, so if you're already the only thing that I need to say is if you're already part of my list of subscribers, like if you're already part of this list, you don't have to register, because I already know that you're interested in the stuff that I share, so I will send you the email straight away. And also I have a pretty cool thing coming up. I'm not ready to just talk about it just yet, but it's something that I'm extremely excited to share with you guys. It's probably my biggest project since the ZBrush guides, and that's gonna be revealed pretty soon as well, and hopefully you guys are gonna find it interesting as well. Alright, so that's it from me today, guys. Have a good weekend and enjoy the rest of the festivities. For those in America, I believe you're still celebrating or about to start with the 4th of July, so be safe and enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Alright guys, cheers, have a good one.